No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
And here we go again. This is Mike Lodge. I am the business advisor, and it is a Saturday morning, the day after St. Patty's Day. And I always know, and I hate to say this, but the day after St. Patty's Day is my birthday. So right after St. Patty's Day, I become 1 year older. It's too bad I'm not 1 year old. Sometimes I act like I'm 1 year old, but I'm 1 year older today. I'm not going to tell you what the number is because, numbers are numbers, right? The only numbers that matter to me is what's on the financial statement, what's on the bank statement, and what's on the tax return, and that's all that I care about when it comes to numbers. My birth date is a number that is growing too highly, and I'm not getting any interest out of it. I tell you, my life began when my uncle called my parents and said, listen, we have a military guy and his girlfriend's pregnant, and they're going to have a baby. Would you like to have that baby? And my mom was joyful because they had been trying to have a child or adopt a child for so many years that now they had a baby boy. Well, they didn't know what it was at that time, but finally I was born, and I was given to my uncle, and my first bed was a drawer. They pulled out of the drawer, put some blankets in it, and that was how I began my life. And then my adopted parents, drove all the way from Yakima, Washington, all the way down to Camp Pendleton, San Diego. My uncle was the chaplain there at Camp Pendleton military base, Marine base. And that's how I began my life. I began it in the drawers of a dresser drawer. And that's the beginning. They rushed me up to Yakima, Washington, and then over to Seattle, Washington, and then from there we moved all over the place. But during that time, I still remember, as a young kid, taking my cousin to the SeaTac airport in Seattle and sending him off to Vietnam. And I can still remember, as plain as day, seeing my aunt cry because she did not know if that son was going to come back. I did not know if my cousin was going to come back. But we all went off to the airport and we said goodbye to him. Luckily, he did come back and lived on with his life. I was also blessed because at that time when I was a young kid growing up, it was the first flight of the 747. I remember watching it on television. Well, no, we didn't even watch it on television. We went down to the airfield and we watched it take off. And I remember sending off, I think it was 25 cents. I sent off and I got a picture of the 747 in its first flight. Now, we're at this time of life, many, many years later, and they've stopped the last Boeing from being built, the 747 from being built. So I've gone the full circle with that plane. That plane is family to me. I have flown to Europe in it. I have flown to all over Asia in it. And now it's no longer going to be made. It's an amazing story, that 747. I have lived through 2 recessions and now a 3rd recession. I still remember when I bought my second house in Phoenix, Arizona. And I can still remember paying 13% interest on that house. Those are tough times. I remember I had to go to a seminar in San Francisco, a CPA seminar. And I was trying to get into the Hyatt Regency in Barcadero. And I was trying to get into that hotel, and I was stopped because there were protesters all around me protesting the Iran situation that we had because our embassy staff had been captured. They had been kidnapped. Gosh, I remember all of this stuff, and I remember when the Space Needle, I was one of the first people went to the World's Fair in Seattle, Washington, and was on the Space Needle. I was there when it was being built. Can you imagine? That's a long time ago. I have seen so many different presidents. I've seen Robert F. Kennedy. He was my first president as I was growing up that I remember, because I remember the day that he was shot. I remember Lyndon B. Johnson. I remember when Robert Kennedy was shot in the hotel in Los Angeles. I remember Carter. I remember, oh my gosh, I remember them all. I've lived through them all. Some were good, some not so good. But back then, we didn't have all of this political nonsense. We didn't have the internet back then. So our only voice was what we saw on the nightly news. That's what we saw. And that's what we made our decisions by. And we got their pamphlets and we got their flyers when they were running for president, and that's what we read. And that's what we made our decisions on. We didn't make our decisions on based upon what other people were saying or what was being propagandaed on, like is now on social media. We didn't have any of that. So we said that, we made our decisions on who they were going to vote for. Sometimes I think the internet did more harm than good. Because now we hate everybody. People hate us. We never had this hate feeling before. The only time I remember really hate feeling is at the end of the Vietnam War. I was in a drill team, and it was the 4th of July, and I was marching in the city of Seattle, and with us on the float behind us was 2 Vietnam War veterans that had just come back. In fact, they had just gotten off the plane. They were still in their uniform, and they rode on the float behind us, and you could see in their faces that they were tired. They were worn out. They had gone through a lot in Vietnam. And we all remember, I remember plain as day, seeing those individuals trying to hang on to that helicopter, leaving the embassy, trying to get them to safety to an airport. I still remember that. And then the same thing happened in Afghanistan just 2 years ago. It's a repeat of history. We keep repeating these things in history that are not so good. Be nice to repeat some good stuff. The times when the economy was good, families were talking, individuals were really good friends, and you kept in contact with everybody by phone because you had to pick up the phone to talk to them. What we do now on our phones, and we send our messages out without any emotion, has killed communication. But there's been also some very good things that have happened. And if you look back on the good, you can kind of overshadow the bad. But you've learned from the bad. However, politicians never learn. That's the biggest problem. They never learn. They just keep repeating the same old nonsense over and over and over again. We Americans, we have to sit back. We have to support our families, our churches, our schools, our jobs. We have a lot more responsibility than a politician. Because all a politician has to do is give a speech, But Americans have to get to work and get it done. That's the biggest difference. But I look back on even in my business career, I have done a lot. From being an accountant to looking at risk management to building a solid tax firm in Los Angeles, working as a mediator on business disputes and then family disputes, starting up a healthcare staffing company, a real estate company, a call center, and a nursing review school in the Philippines. So I have done a lot, I've seen a lot, I have worked a lot. So on this birthday, it's kind of like going back and you sit down in a chair with a cup of coffee, which I did this morning, by the way. Sat down with a cup of coffee and thought back on everything that I've done in my life. Thank God, when you're thinking about this stuff in your mind, it goes a lot faster than when you say it. I have met some very good people in my life. In the time that I have lived, I have made some very, very close friends, so close that I feel as though they are my family. I've lost friends. I've lost family. I put trust in people that I probably should never have put trust in, and they burnt me. I have been in relationships where I thought would last forever, and then all of a sudden they're gone. But in these years that I have been alive, in my birthday, I celebrate my birthday mostly in silence because it's that time for me to sit back and reflect and say, okay, what am I going to do next? That's why I started my bucket list, because I said, you know what, I'm getting older and older and older by the day, and I need to create some stuff that I want to do. I want to get done. I want to explore. I want to help other people. I want to be more spiritual. That's what happens when you get old. You pronounce words that sound familiar but are wrong. But I'm trying to develop my spiritual life even every single day. But as you look back over the years, you say, Mike, you've been faithful over a few things. You have done many things. You have had people touch your lives and make it better. And every single day you become closer and closer to God. I saw that in my father as he was passing away from cancer. Every day he spent getting closer to God. Because he knew at some moment in time, and he didn't know the day, he didn't know the hour that he would pass away. But he kept doing stuff. I remember my stepfather, he was on deathbed, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, Mike, I don't want to die. I still have stuff to do. So on birthdays, you look at your life, and there are many things that you can be proud of, and there are some things that you can not be so proud of. But it's what you do next. How you go forward in life and what you do next. Listen, everybody, happy birthday. And God bless. I'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.